American society has made immense progress towards inclusivity and diversity through the last several years. Yes, there is still work to be done, there always will be, and yes, there have been quite a few growing pains and adjustments, but true progressivism is on the rise. Never before has there been so much speculation, deliberation, debate, or even just plain focus on topics of intersectionality and individual identity, such as race, culture, gender, sexuality, socioeconomic class, and other facets of one's construct of self in this 21st century. And, whether or not they actually buy into them, you know the buzz around these topics is big when corporations begin making attempts to monetize any morsel they can. Enter rainbowless Skittles, for example. The biggest media streaming giants in the game, Netflix, Hulu, etc., all have some version of a Representation Matters collection, and are all dumping millions of dollars into developing, producing, and promoting more diverse content. See Bridgerton, in an age where it is not only called for, but demanded. And it appears this call for inclusivity has not only caused a shift in consciousness for the content creators, but also the consumers. The LGBTQ community should serve as a poster child for the expedited progress our society has made despite its obstacles. Gay marriage was only fully legalized and equalized in 2015. That's less than a decade ago. Yet the amount of queer representation in media today is astounding and should be considered a triumph in and of itself. This is, of course, unfortunately, not to say members of the LGBTQ community are no longer faced with bigotry and discrimination today, but the landscape is at least changing, and for the better. And while in no way taking away from or minimizing the work of activists, allies, and fighters for social change, film, TV, and media all had a helping hand in dissolving the rigid heteronormative structures and perceptions of old. Media has the power to normalize, to aid social change. The metaphysical can be a proxy for tangible effect in the real world, and that effect can be measured over time. As mentioned earlier, cultural, ethnic, and racial diversity, inclusivity, and representation have been in demand as much as that of sexuality and sexual orientation. More and more stories of characters of color are being told and shared in recent years, with many of those stories enjoying widespread success, critically and otherwise.
Don't freeze. I never freeze.
2018's Black Panther was of course a thundering success story for this cultural renaissance, tapping into the rich African heritage lying at the core of the Marvel character's mythos, while also becoming one of the biggest blockbusters of all time. And again, this progress towards not just tolerance, but loving acceptance and pride has a measurable impact on society, all the way down to the movie viewing audience and experience as a whole. Spa Night. "2016 was a fun one, right? Seems like child's play after the hellish 6 years we've endured since, but it's always an interesting time to look back on. Was this the beginning of the end of it all? Is this where society began its slow descent into chaos and ruin? Regardless, we'll use this as our starting point for this thought experiment we've engaged in together. Thank you, by the way, for still being here. 2016, only a year after gay marriage was fully legalized in all 50 states, was also the year the world saw the release of one American indie film, Spa Night. Spa Night stars Jo So from Netflix's Cobra Kai, Yoon Ho Cho Harry Kim and is directed by Andrew Ahn.
He's there, he discovers this world of underground gay hookups that kind of scares and excites him.
This is like within the Korean community.
Yep.
The film follows David, played by Joso, a young Korean American coming to grips with his sexuality while working in a Korean day spa in the incredibly intersectional Los Angeles, specifically in Koreatown. The film's dialogue is almost entirely spoken in Korean, meaning subtitles are used for non-Korean speaking viewers throughout its entire runtime. I recently had the chance to not only take a look at the original script for Spa Night, but also got to speak to producer Kelly Thomas of the film. The screenplay, written in English, did note from the top that all dialogue would ultimately be replaced with Korean in the film, with the exception of a few English and Spanish lines. Given the fact the film was a passion project written and directed by a Korean-American filmmaker who wanted to cast a wide net for potential collaborators, writing the script in English makes sense. But producer Kelly Thomas admitted to me that the idea of later replacing all of the English to Korean led to some uneasiness early on. As a producer, and she was not alone in this assumption, the idea of producing a foreign language film in America, a country with Koreans making up just 0.56% of the population as of 2015, likely meant limiting their own potential audience from the start.
This film is breaking some boundaries, and we're gonna, maybe have a little controversy.